All right, let's flash forward to 2000. You make the final table of the World Series main event. You're over.
Really pregnant.
Yes, you're
I had
over
the baby.
8 months pregnant.
I had the baby like 2 weeks later.
Yeah, with your third child.
That was my third. Yeah, Lucy.
Tell me about that experience.
I had to go to the bathroom a lot. I missed a lot of hands that World Series. You know, it's really funny. I was thinking about this the other day, that with like 10 people left in that event, I had like 500,000 in chips, which wasn't a bad chip count.
Right.
And I think now about the chip counts when there's
It would be so bad.
there were only, I think there were 512 people in that tournament.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's so crazy to think like how few people there were then. I was really, really pregnant, and I remember at some point early on, I stood up on my chair to get a look around the room, and the tournament director came over. They're like, "Get off that chair!" Like, they were freaking out. And I can tell you, the biggest memory I have from that tournament was the very last hand of day one. I had been really struggling. I had a very good table day one, and back then, like, tables weren't necessarily great when you first started, because it wasn't like this crazy 6,000 people. So I had a very good table, and I hadn't been able to take advantage of it at all. Like, I just was, like, completely card dead. So you started with 10,000 back then, so I have 11,000 going into the last hand of day one. Mm-hmm. And I looked down at the last hand of day one, and I have aces. And I literally thought to myself, what kind of sick joke is this? Mm-hmm. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I've played until 2 in the morning as pregnant as I am.
This is it.
And now I'm going to get knocked out with aces on the last hand of the first day. Oh, obviously, I won the hand. I actually, a guy raised and I moved all in, and he called me with King Jack. I still remember the hand. And anyway, so I actually doubled up to a little over 22,000, which was actually a very good chip count at that point. So I actually ended up coming into day two really healthy because of that. But I remember that so well, I would just remember going, like, what kind of sick BS? Just why do I have aces on it? It was such a moan. But anyway, so.
Was it really emotional busting out in 10th?
You know, it actually wasn't. I think that normally it would have been, but I was so tired. I really was. Like, obviously I would have liked to have done better, but I was so ready to just go home and have the baby. I'd been doing the World Series at that point, you know, I'd been there for 4 weeks and that World Series was really hard because, like, I was at the point in my pregnancy where, like, my feet were swelling up every day. You know, because you have to be like this, and that's bad. When you're pregnant, you want to get your feet up at the end. Yeah. And so my feet would look like elephant feet at the end of the day. And I was just, I remember I was so tired and so swollen up. I see the pictures of me from then, and my face is, like, really swollen. And I think that I was just, like, I was happy that I made it that far, as pregnant as I was, and happy to go home and have Lucy, who's a really cool kid.
All right. You were one of the first bona fide poker celebrities. What do you attribute that to?
You know what? Honestly, because I have a really weird story. I think that because I have a really weird story, it really got people kind of interested in me. And what I tell people all the time is, like, I always recognized that I was in a really good position because there are other people who had to do a lot more than I did in order to get the recognition. And I think that we see that now a lot with, you know, people win bracelets all the time or they win WPTs all the time and they don't even necessarily get a deal with a site. So there were kind of two advantages that I had. One was that I was right at the beginning. So you see that with, like, Chris Ferguson, my brother Howard, you know, Mike Matiso, all of these people who were there at the beginning. And, you know, John Dewanda, Eric Lindgren, all of us who were there when the cameras first came around had a big advantage. Because we were new, and so we could build brands right away and then just live on that brand, you know. So that, I thought that was really good. But then it was the whole, like, mom of four thing, where basically I think that people felt like for a mom of four to be a poker player was really weird, but also for a poker player to be a mom of four was really weird. So I had it kind of going both ways. You know, it was just like a lucky chance of fate. I happened to have 4 children before the poker boom hit.
And being a woman, do you think
No,
that?
No, obviously, I mean, you see that with Jennifer Harmon as well, that, you know, we both have big advantages from being a woman. I think that, and Vanessa Russo too, I mean, we all obviously have great accomplishments in our own right, but I don't think that we need to accomplish as much. And that's not to say that we aren't driven to accomplish as much, that all of us are legitimate in our own right in terms of our records.
Right.
But definitely, I think as a woman, you have a little bit less pressure on yourself.
Yeah. Winning a second bracelet, how important?
You know what? I mean, obviously, I would love to win a second bracelet. I'm trying really hard. The bracelet is always important, but for me, at this point in my career, you know, I mean, I've already, like, I stopped playing cash games regularly, like at the Bellagio or whatever, in like 2002, 2003, and that was really a quality of life issue for me. I had done that as the way that I made my money since 94. So from like, well, actually since 92, I played the World Series in 94. So 92 was when I sort of started playing poker. 93 was when I really got into it, and then 94 was when I became a pro. So I had really been supporting myself for really 9 or 10 years, mainly on cash games. And it just took a lot of time away from my kids.
Yeah.
So I decided that I had to do one or the other. That it was either, you know, so I'd always made this choice to do cash games and then only play the World Series. And then when all this poker boom hit, you know, the way that you got the TV branding was through the tournaments. So I knew that I just couldn't do both. So I chose tournaments. I mean, I think that just in terms of the ability to, you know, continue to be branded and that kind of thing, it was more important for me to make that choice, and I kind of gave up playing cash games. I miss it, but it was the right choice for me and my family. And, you know, because of that, I think that I lost, I don't want to say lose, that I got over the idea that I needed to be in the biggest game in the room in order to have legitimacy, and that I needed to be doing all this stuff in order to have legitimacy. I think I realized sort of what was important in my life, and honestly, my kids are the most important thing to me, and my relationships, and, you know, my boyfriend and my parents and that kind of thing. So the poker stuff for me is really now about just being a great player for me, for what I'm capable of within great, right? So, you know, there's a range of what I'm capable of, and I always kind of want to push the envelope for what I can do. And I don't really compare myself to other people anymore. I recognize that there's lots of people out there, depending on the game, that are much better than I am. Certainly at No Limit Hold'em, that's true. And my life now is just about improving and becoming better. And if a bracelet comes along with that, you know, that's really sweet. But I don't need it.
Well, you've always spoken out in favor of player rights.
Yes.
What's the one thing you'd like to see changed? I'm pretty sure I know this answer, but
you know, I think that I mean, there's a few things. I'm trying to think of what the top thing would be. I mean, obviously, I took care of that WPT thing, along with some of my compadres.
Yes.
I think that you know, it's that players need to recognize that they need to band together for long-term gain, instead of always just thinking about the short-term thing. Like, there's an equity play in this tournament, and we found that when we were dealing with the WPT. The WPT release was very bad. And it was like Survivor bad. And we were very happy to finally settle that, and the WPT ended up being very cooperative and changed the release for everybody. But what I thought was really interesting about it was when we initially filed that suit, we didn't have a lot of support from the players. Right. Because they felt like we're going to take, I don't know what exactly the argument was. I think some people felt like we were biting the hand that fed us, which was interesting. And then other people were like, well, we don't want to miss a tournament because the tournaments are really good. But at that point already, you know, we just recognized that the image rights in that release weren't really fair. So we were willing to sit out, and that we were sort of taking a long-term view of it. But, you know, like I say, the WPT in the end was very cooperative.
Well, you sat out for a while, though, right?
For over 2 years. I didn't play an event for almost 3 years. From the last event that I had played was Aruba in 2006, I think. And then the first event that I played after that was this year, so it was 3 years.
Yeah.
Almost 3.5 years. So, but you know what? I was okay doing that. I have other things that I can do with my time, and I felt like players really needed to have their rights protected, and I would do it again, support or no support. But I think that now there's another issue, which has to do with the fact that we're still paying fees in order to be on TV.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, I also recognize it's just hard to get the players to band together, and that's why I say, like, getting the players to understand what their rights are and what they should be fighting for, I think would be my number one goal. But right now, it's one of the craziest things ever. It's like the casinos are getting all this advertising out of having us on TV, obviously.
Right.
When you look at what's happened to poker rooms around the country, it's crazy.